Alright, so here we see the DEWALT 20 volt DCS371. Now this is a B model because I bought this as a bare tool. 20 volt max portable bandsaw. Kind of a specialized tool that you're generally going to see around metal fabricators and electricians, especially electricians. This is basically, for electricians, it's a specialized conduit cutter. I found this to be incredibly very useful, the previous model, the 18 volt model, to be very useful when I was doing small scale metal fabrication, building small trailers, lightweight projects, stuff for the 4x4 stuff. It's fast, it's convenient, it makes working with metal about as easy as working with wood, in some respects even easier. And a lot of it has to do with the speed and convenience that I could cut metal tubing, especially square tubing, which traditionally just doesn't really cut very straight when you use a Sawzall. I can cut round tubing with a fairly high level of precision on this. And so for the home metal fabrication, this is going to come in very useful on small scale stuff where the tabletop metal cutting bandsaws are the ones that have their own little stand or kind of automatic where you can set it for cut and walk away. Those may be overkill and may take up just too much room, especially if you're going to run a mobile metal fab type outfit. And for mobile metal fab, this just comes in very useful. What I found though is even among professional electricians, it's a rare tool. Usually the individual electrician doesn't own one. A electrician helper like myself almost never owns one, except that I also do a lot of pirate work on the side, and so the minority of electrical work I do is actually through the company. And I don't have any qualms about that because a lot of the pirate work that I do, I'm fixing stuff that a pro screwed up anyway. On the commercial jobs, though, they tend to hire the most competent people to run those sites, so I'm just a helper at those, and I'm in the learning phase on a lot of that stuff. And because of that, I try to bring something else to the table when I go to work, which is I try to bring advanced tools and make myself a little bit more useful, a little bit more valuable on a job site. And that's where you have to impress the tool snobs, and the DEWALT name brand definitely does that. So let's get into the controls and improvements over this versus the older model. Obviously it takes a new 20 volt battery system. What I have is one of the lower capacity lithium batteries on this. You would generally use this for smaller diameter pipe, maybe copper pipe, and some of the smaller diameter plumbing stuff. If you're going to be cutting a lot of steel, you pretty much got to use a 3 to 5 amp hour batteries. DEWALT has several models of those now. The blade I have in here is a fine tooth blade. It'll cut most of your harder steels, but you're going to have a little bit of a problem with stainless steel. But it will cut, pretty thick steel up to the thickness of what you'll see in this little opening. That's not a very big opening. So let's say, for example, if I were to cut this pull cue down or something like that, then that's pretty much the limit of what this thing's going to cut. It's not made for big diameter stuff. It's made for precision, fast cuts on moderately small diameter metal, whether it's square tube, round tube, or perhaps a hex or octagon shape. We also have some other improvements here. This little bar and wheel system is now got a few more adjustments on it. We've got an adjustment on the wheel here, which is newer than the older one right here. One of the problems that some of the people talk about on the older ones, and I definitely had that problem, was the blade and the little rubber tire on the wheel here would try to walk off from each other. And then eventually what happens is the little rubber tire walks inward, the blade walks outward, and it starts throwing blades off the machine. Now there's an adjustment here to compensate for that. The Allen wrench for that is stored in the handle. Kind of tricky to get out though. I found pretty much got to use a Leatherman tool to pry it out, and that's to keep it from getting lost once you press it back in. The switch, the trigger switch, is a safety trigger. And that's because the way somebody's going to work with this tool a lot, they're going to be picking it up and putting it down. this switch is not one, let's say, where you would pull the trigger, trip it, and then it stays on, the way you might see with a jigsaw, so that you can make precision round or asymmetrical cuts. This is pretty much just for straight cuts and a lot of fast precision straight cuts in tubular or rod or all thread or something like that. So it's made to turn off as soon as you let go of it. So what this is a safety switch similar to what's on their circular saws. It's ambidextrous, works on both sides, but you have to press it in with the thumb in order to get that on. Now here's something else you get. You get a little work light, so you can actually get a better look at the area that you're cutting. Notice that light stays on for several seconds after I let up on the trigger, so you could actually run this, let up on the trigger, get a look at where everything's going, and work with some precision. There's a few places you could put your other hand when you're working with this saw. Now, what a lot of people are going to do is they're realistically going to be hanging on to the piece that they're cutting and working it into, you know, you can work it. What I like to do is I like to make a slight rotation as I'm cutting something. Then again, you could also hang on to it right here. The trick is you want to avoid the temptation to start grabbing it up around here, because your hand will be around some moving parts. Now, here's where the safety comes in on this compared to something like a reciprocating saw, is that it's not really jerking back and forth as it cuts. So as it dulls, it's not like it's going to snag the thing and then grab your finger, which is, you know, most common injuries of the Sawzall is somebody's holding the piece they're cutting with one hand or holding the saw with the other. The blade dulls and it's jerking back and forth, and it jerks their hand into it. On this, if you do touch that while it's running, you know, if you're not driving into the sharp part of the blade, it's not the end of the world, okay? You're probably not going to lose a finger on this tool. So if somebody's a little bit clumsy, this isn't like using something with carbide tips where the cutting characteristics change a lot as it dulls, and then it you know, can really screw you up. But you still have to be safe, and it's not as safe as using some of the oscillating tool blades. But you could cut yourself. I mean, you got to be relatively careful. It's just that it's safer than other types of saws, and I consider it to be much safer than anything that's going to use an abrasive blade that throws sparks around. As far as the power of the saw goes, that varies according to what batteries you're going to use. For example, the most powerful batteries I own right now are these 4 amp hour batteries. DEWALT just recently came out with a 5 amp hour battery. Whenever you use a battery that's just physically larger, you could probably safely assume that you have more power in that battery. The 3, 4, and 5 amp hour batteries from DEWALT right now all use the same basic housing, so you'd have to look at it a little more carefully. Like the 3 amp hour battery, this one's a 4, the 3 amp hour battery, the colors are reversed. I believe the bottom side is going to be yellow and the top side black. On the 5 amp hour battery, it looks just like this one, but I think it says something like XR5 somewhere on there. But if you're going to do heavier duty cutting with this, then you want to switch over to the larger battery. If you're just cutting plastic or copper, you're probably going to be just fine with the smaller battery. When these come in the kit with a battery and a charger, they're usually going to give you a single 3 amp hour battery. Is it a deal? It's fair, but it's not a giveaway. It's not a super bargain. What I'm told by the people over at Acme Tool, where I bought this, is that DEWALT is going to be coming up with some sort of a summer rebate program and promotional deals in the next few weeks that may offer better deals that are probably going to involve some of their 5 amp hour batteries. So if you have any questions about these saws or DEWALT power tools in general, I can answer what I can, but I'm not a salesman for the company. I'm just a guy who discovered them and I use them. The 2 power tool brands that I personally use the most are DEWALT and Ryobi. My choices for that have to do with what I can buy conveniently locally. what I could get deals on locally, and what I feel are two incomplete tool systems which complement each other. Although there are other perfectly good tool systems out there, such as Rigid and Milwaukee, I just don't use them because I consider them to be incomplete tool systems compared to the relatively large product lines from DEWALT and Ryobi. And what I found is that pretty much anything that I needed to use cordless power tools for could be one or the other. As far as cutting demonstrations, you're going to see a lot of cutting demonstrations with this in upcoming videos, and we'll link those in. But basically, everything I could tell, the new model cuts like the old model. The added features are the adjustability in the wheel system, the work light, and of course compatibility with their 20-volt lithium-ion batteries.